3 years to the next elections and politics of the ruling Jubilee party is escalating, and the current state of the party in power tops up the greatest puzzles of Kenya's political arena. Rift Valley members of parliament now want the president to come clean and assure the region whether he still supports Deputy President William Ruto's bid for the presidency in 2022. Since the Harambee House truce in 2018, suspicion has been rising in Ruto's camp over his fate. Ruto's close allies from the Rift Valley, Western Kenya and Coast say the re-entry of Odinga could jolt the Jubilee Party's smooth power transition plan in 2022. How much responsibility should Team Jubilee take for the course of Kenya's politics that is currently in the country? And did the Kenyatta-Odinga political reconciliation render the opposition invaluable? Talk to us. The hashtag is News Compass on Twitter, and 40920 is the short SMS code. Later, I'll sample some of your responses, even as we prepare up for the all-important match against the Taifa Stars of Tanzania in the AFCON 2019 edition. But I'll be joined in the next half an hour by Anthony Odhiambo, who is political commentator and analyst in the country. Anthony, I do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on board, and good evening. Now, my starting point here will be perhaps to, first of all, take a stock of the developments in the country, and I just want us to focus on the ruling Jubilee Party, because that seems to be the umbilical cord of the political development in the country, not to mention the opposition in the country that is faulted for not reinventing itself and coalesce around a cause that might drive Kenyans from the current state of uncertainty. Looking at the developments generally, are we there?
When talking about Jubilee, let me give you a little bit of history of what I understand political parties to be. If you get yourself to Brazil, you'll find the Workers' Party. Okay. The Workers' Party is known for fighting for the workers' interest. And this is the party that was led by Lula da Silva, who is now actually in prison, who is now in jail. Then if you go to South Africa, you find ANC. ANC is always known for the Freedom Charter, which actually wanted a political party that wanted the land to be taken back to the black South African. Yeah. If you go to Tanzania, you get the CCM.
Yeah, that's the ruling party.
The ruling party. The ruling party is known for fighting for independence of Tanzania. The question now we are asking ourselves, what is Jubilee Party known for? What does it stand for? Then once we know that, then we can now try to dissect the situation we find ourselves now. Okay. For example, we've just said the members of parliament from Rift Valley are asking the president, tell us, where do you stand with supporting the DP in coming 2022? The question then you ask yourself, if you go back to in 95, there were two candidates in CCM, where you had Lowassa.
Okay.
You had Lowassa and then Benjamin Mkapa. The question then was, who among them was the best candidate? Okay. Mwalimu Nyerere actually came up and said, look, no, Mkapa was a better candidate. Why? Because he felt Edward Lowassa was a young man, very rich, but he could not account for the source of his wealth. Now, the question then we ask ourselves, was it a must that in Jubilee, the only person who can run for the presidency is deputy president?
Of course, they are the Kenyans, and he did allude to that when he said that we might have other candidates who will pass the party primaries and be the candidate or the flag bearer in 2022. And he said he'll stand to support that, but has quashed or poured water over the Raila re-entry into the political arena, than to be specific, the Jubilee Party bedroom. And they believe that he has perhaps a political plan to scuttle his chances. That's the fear.
If that is the case, then Jubilee Party is not a political party per se. Just because somebody who owns his own party, ODM, would come in and then disorient everyone. Then if that is the case, then actually in Kenya we don't have a political party. That is a sad state of affair. Otherwise, look, where I come from, political parties are supposed to build the economy of a country, and actually to set the pace for even the tax regime that you have. Okay. Now, as we speak now, it seems that this political party is just a matter of reorganizing themselves and acquiring power, and that is all, with no economic plan for the country. That is my sad situation.
Okay, allow me to use this phrase because it apparently also serves well in our political arena. You have mentioned Brazil and the political development in the ruling parties that still are in power and are founding parties, to be specific, CCM and ANC, but also the sister party in Zimbabwe is still in power under the Crocodile Mnangagwa. But events their boy, that is a term used in the European politics, has led to the fragmented parliament in Brussels, and it appears that our politics is equally fragmented. And now with our attention on the ruling Jubilee party that has never held a parliamentary group meeting since 2018, start of 2018, and members of parliament are now saying that they will force its convention. Does it equally point to the sense of the detriment that the political class has been displaying ever since the gains of the multi-party democracy in 1991?
You see, in Kenya, we have political parties who are owned by the wealthy, the wealthiest in the country. And so the political parties are really not to serve the interest of the Mwananchi. Because if you ask yourself, why would you have a political party without structures? Okay. Structures where you find the chairman is appointed, the secretary general is appointed, and every leadership in the political party is appointee, not an elected person. So then the question then is, these appointed leaders, are they serving the interest of the party members, or are they serving the appointing authority? Because why would Jubilee not have structures up to the grassroots level? Because ideally, if you ask me, a member of parliament need to be vetted by a political party structure in the constituency, such that the person who is running for the members of parliament for the parliamentary seat is known by the leadership of the constituency. Where we are now, we don't have those kind of structures. So without those structures, this becomes properties of individuals, unfortunately. And this is not just for Jubilee. This is for every party that I see around. The political establishment in the country. Yes.
And that brings me to the question here, which is equally important, and to take a look at the opposition coalition, because that is the NASA coalition. It does exist on paper, but some have castigated about its existence, the likes of Moses Wetangula saying that it's a dead entity now. But also the dejection point politically in the country is that the opposition has equally failed to reinvent itself and coalesce around a national cause. Now the ODM party fought Kenya, Moses Wetangula's fought Kenya, ANC of Musalia Mudavadi, and CCM, Chamacha, of course, that is founded by the former Bomet governor, will come into this bracket. Have they been rendered officially or exclusively invaluable by the coming together, the political reconciliation of Odinga and Kenyatta?
Our opposition, if you ask me, do not have any agenda. And the agenda basically in the beginning was to capture power. Unfortunately, they were not able to. So they remain genderless. Now the ruling party is actually in disarray. You find the deputy president with his team pulling on a different direction, starting to campaign now. You have the president, the people are loyal to the president now, actually just holding horses. Then with this kind of pull and push, clearly even the opposition, because if you look at the adjustment on the VAT and the fuel, clearly the opposition should have stood with the people, and unfortunately that did not take place because most of the time the opposition will always stand with the people. That did not take place. The government, as we speak now, you'll find some members of parliament from Jubilee were actually behaving like they're in the opposition. So as we say now, I think the opposition is equally dead because of the disorder you have in the Jubilee party. Yes.
Given that, and you've mentioned the two factions of the ruling Jubilee party, Team Kieleweke and Team Tanga Tanga, one of course paying allegiance to the president, saying that the DP is undermining the presidency, but equally the opposition seems to be in some way heading in the wayward direction, and that generally creates a picture about a bleeding political establishment in the country. But going back to 2013, I'll come to the divisions in the ruling party and the women entity now, Team Embrace, and the other entity led by Laikipia women representative, that is Kate Waruguru. what catapulted the head of state and the Deputy President William Ruto in 2013 to power or their ascendancy has been the shared indictment of the crimes against humanity at the ICC. That appears to be off the vicinity politically here in the country. Are we likely to see perhaps the creation of another narrative going forward in the next 3 years that might change the discourse politically in this country, as is the case in France with Marine Le Pen or Matteo Salvini in Italy or Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson in the UK?
I'm happy you mentioned what is happening in UK now, where about the Brexit, and you find Theresa May was not able to get Britain out of it, and now you have this Johnson, but where we are now as a country. And I'm strong on economic aspect of it. Politics being what it is, sometimes politicians just come together to get power. When you have a situation as we are now, where every political party is pulling in a different direction, and particularly the ruling party is pulling in a different direction, then actually that affects the foreign direct investors in the country, because it creates uncertainty. And that's why you realize most foreign investors would want to keep their money without investing in the economy, just keeping it in the bank. That affects the economy. Now, if this continues like this, then big investors will never put more money into the economy. That is a sad part of it. The question then you ask yourself is, do these political parties formed to build a country, or are they just formed to acquire power? Now, if they are formed to build a country, then you'll start realizing that where you come from in your village, you'll have a representative of a political party. They are very strong. If they are really just created to acquire power, then you'll not have a structure at all. It'll just be amorphous, because when it is amorphous, it's difficult to attack it. If it is structured, then it is very easy to attack it.
And you have mentioned the policy-making aspect and how that will have a direct consequence on the economy, and that again brings me to the essence of perhaps the integrity and the stature, the material of the political class membership in the country. And just to be specific on the utterances made by Starehe Member of Parliament Charles Njago Kanji, to the extent that the Tanzanian Parliament say that we want the safety of our nationals guaranteed in Kenya. Looking at the crop of the political players that we have in the country, do they match our foreign policy in the sense that we also have some investor fear of people who are running away with regards to the capital flight and the building up of bigger economies up top in Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia now off the curve, and President Magufuli, who often has been castigating Kenyans when it comes to clean hands of doing business? We as a country must decide who speaks for us. If we decide today that Kalem Ndile will speak to us, to speak for us on matters of regional business, then we have to take that. If we decide today the member of parliament for, which constituency or name?
The one that was talking about
Charles Njago Kanji, Starehe Member of Parliament.
Starehe Member of Parliament. If we decide Starehe Member of Parliament will speak on our behalf, then that will be a real catastrophe. Because you see, the business of a country is so intertwined by the neighboring country. And as we speak now, you have Kenya who represent East Africa. You have South Africa who represent
the southern
Africa. So we, as the giant in this, we have to be very careful in some of the utterances that we make, because let's face it, we do a lot of business with Tanzania and Uganda, and so much goods are passing through Kenya, through Mombasa, and so some of the utterances. Really, we shouldn't take them seriously, depending on where they're coming from. So if the Starehe Member of Parliament is speaking, for me, it's not even something that we should discuss, because I don't consider him either an intellectual giant. I don't consider him as somebody we have to look up to. There are better people in this country that can actually represent our interests and talk on our behalf in terms of regional politics. So that may stand. But let's talk about the business which is being interfered with the Chinese. Recently I tried to buy an item from Nigeria. and I couldn't get it here in the country. So
that was an online shopping?
An online shopping. And yet I can buy something from China and get it here. So the question then we have to ask ourselves is, how are we trading among African? For that to happen, we cannot allow this kind of conversation where we are castigating a country, Tanzania against Kenya and Kenya against Uganda. We have to be more careful. But as we are speaking now, we have Jubilee as a political party. Do the Jubilee have a structure of disciplining their members? For you to have a structure of disciplining your members, you must have a disciplinary committee, which I don't think they have.
Okay.
So even to punish or to reprimand this member of parliament will be difficult because they've got no structure. That is my fear.
Okay, with regards to the written down constitution that they did unveil on the 10th day of September 2016 at the Kasarani Stadium, when they say this is a party that will be ruling the country until 2032, this is the person who should be convening the parliamentary group meeting, Raphael Tuju, who is seen not as friendly to the Deputy President William Ruto's cause. And the leader of the majority party, who will write to him as per the laid-down procedure, said, I quote him, members are supposed to inform the majority whip Ben Washali and in consultation with my office, and the SG is then notified as the party leader. There has been no parliamentary group meeting as required by the party constitution, at least to have twice or to meet twice every year. This again points to the deep sense of mistrust and disintegration that is in the horizon of the ruling Jubilee Party. Does it speak generally to the poison political environment that seems to be toxic by the day as we build up to 2022, which is 3 years away, interestingly?
It's sad what is happening in Jubilee. Unfortunately, I'm not a member of Jubilee. And also it's equally sad that you have a PS who's equally the Secretary General of a party. So if you ask me, I would have preferred a Secretary General of a party not to be a permanent secretary. So because Tuju is actually a minister. But then as it may, what is considered that, look, when people decide to meet, they should be allowed to meet. If that's what the constitution of that party requires, that the parliamentary caucuses should happen, they should actually call for that meeting. The danger is, if you can break your own constitution, how easy is it for you to protect the constitution of the national constitution? National constitution. Yes. So the question then is, are these the right people to entrust the running of our country? If in their little party they cannot go by what they've agreed on. So those are the sad state of affairs. And let's not be too hard on Jubilee as well. Okay. We are a young democracy. We are 50 years old. And Jubilee, I think it's 7 years old.
7 years,
7 years old. I think they are also suffering from the teething problems where they don't have structures. They're afraid to conduct their party elections. Okay. And then, of course, the influence of money in those party elections. So let's see what happens. But how I wish that they build it block by block. And that will take time, but they should start from somewhere. Because if you read their constitution also, they say that they'll do an election after 3 years of their existence. Okay. The question then is, so after 3 years, you have 2 years to the election. So would they be able to have enough time to build a proper infrastructure, to build a proper party? Okay. They should have started it from the word go they got into power. Immediately after the election, they should have just started immediately and started from the grassroots and build up the infrastructure. Because once you have those infrastructure in the party, me and you can vie in those political party and be wherever we can be. But without a structure, you cannot stand for anything in that party. Those are the sad part of it. Okay. Now, while we're looking at the ruling Jubilee Party's happenings or the fate of the party, that just is a microcosm of the larger political development in the country. Now, turning our attention to the opposition, the Raila Odinga Uhuru Kenyatta Harambee House truce equally ended months of political uncertainty in the country. But there are fears that it might not live beyond 2022, and that has been the case in 2007 when the dust settled on the post-election skirmishes that engulfed the country following the disputed presidential elections. And at the time when the ECK chairperson, the late Samuel Kivuti, disowned his own management of the election. Is the handshake for posterity, for continuity beyond 2022? And what if
it fails again in 2022, we meet, some political leaders will come, perhaps settle the political uncertainty 4 months. Does it again perhaps bring about the fundamental hypocrisy of Kenya's political establishment that has been evident ever since 1991?
I think our elections in this country, sometimes you feel like we are going to war. And that's why, that's why every time we have an election, it's the feeling that like we are basically at war. But it was a good thing that there was that handshake. It was a good thing for the country. As much as for the individual, I don't know what transpired, but it was very good for the country to have that lull because the economy was not doing well. No one was investing. Everybody was holding back. In fact, those who are selling land and buying, no one was buying any land. Any construction that was taking place was actually at hold. So with that handshake, it created some lull, and then the economy started growing, and most people started getting jobs, and most companies also started recruiting. The unfortunate thing that this, after 2022, will not be there, and that's why it will be very good now if Jubilee Party can build their structures, so that they can compete as a political party with proper structures. So that will give us certainty in 2022. When you know you have a party which has structures, which have leadership, which have internal democracy. And so is ODM should do the same. ANC for Musalia Mudavadi should do the same. For any other party should do the same. So that when you're going to 2022, you know these are the political parties with the proper structures. Those who want to vie in those parties are there. Then you are assured of 2022 past 2022. But with everything a bit confused like this, I'm afraid we might get back to the same situation we were in 2017.
Okay, and given that, because we were just a decade from the post-election violence in 2007 when we headed into the last elections in 2017. But equally, when I look at the political development in the ruling Jubilee Party, you look at the Ruto card here in the ruling party. His allies are simultaneously playing the victor and the victim card here regarding what's going to be transpiring in 2022, while on the other end, the ODM party seems to have lost its control of opposition politics with regards to now the handshake appearing to be confining them to the needs of the party. We have seen that happen when John Mbadi abandoned his own statements just 24 hours after he made that in a rally regarding the launch of the new currency in Narok by the CBK Governor Dr. Patrick Njoroge. However, on that note then, let's hit the break here. Antonio Odhiambo, when we come back, we'll have 15 minutes to take a look or get stock of the way forward and the longevity politically needed in the country to address or remedy the current political problems in the country, and whether we need a paradigm shift politically in the country. 40920 is the short SMS code. The hashtag on Twitter is News Compass. We are coming back after the short break. Stay tuned. All right, thank you so much for watching the program. And we are on air, you're on time. I just want to take a look at some of your tweets on the big screen here because we are not doing this discussion alone. Therefore, it takes me there. I just want to sample some here on our touch screen because they are equally important as what you have been saying. Werunga Wisdom says the handshake between President Kenyatta and the ODM leader Raila Odinga brought unity and peace to Kenyans, but divided the ruling Jubilee Party. The hashtag is News Compass. And Fanon Dhamo says, will President Kenyatta disband his cabinet? The question that seems to be relevant in the establishment. If not, how is he going to deal with the infighting and suspicion that have hit a crescendo and permeated into the cabinet? The hashtag News Compass. And of course, the discussion is lively on air with our guest, Anthony Odhiambo. And Elizabeth Lizzie says, nevertheless, the handshake was never about politics. It was about unity, progress, and development. And the hashtag is News Compass. That was about 8 minutes ago. I agree with the guest on bench. The motto of our republic, Harambe, let's pull all together, has been sadly more about the hope rather than the practice. The hashtag is News Compass. Alfred, to just sample some, Alfred Mbaye says, primarily the handshake was a message by the president to the people of Kenya that far too much energy and resources are spent fighting to further divisions rather than fighting to increase unity and thus the progress. And to just pick up some final here, and Ngamia Fuji on Twitter says, do the naysayers of the handshake miss the tumultuous times so much? The hashtag News Compass at Ayub Abdikadir. And one final one, Uhuru is telling Tim Keleweke to shut. That is about seeking votes with regards to development. And those are some of your views. Just view the final one. The divisions in the ruling party are now nearing crisis levels, with the latest twist in the President Kenyatta and the DP William Ruto souring relations. Continue sending them in the hashtag is News Compass as I get back to my guest to continue in the next couple of minutes. That's about 8 minutes to finish up things here with regards to the way forward of the political development. You can, of course, keep them coming. Now, Anthony, it's equally important to take a look at what history has in store for us as a country and the fears perhaps held or harbored by the allies of the Deputy President William Ruto, who hand on heart said that Raila Odinga is all about blocking the DP. On the other hand, the opposition says now we have been directed to sideline the DP politically, but we respect the president. They have been, of course, abusing in political hyperboles after the contested elections of 2017. Going forward, ever since 1991, the multi-party democracy point, we have seen an exponential growth in the number of parties and players. But there seems to be little trickle-down effect when you look at the liquidity of the substantial gains Kenyans have made out of the policy-making process. Going forward, do we need a new generation and perhaps a paradigm shift at the ballot come the next elections?
As I said, that we are a young democracy. Imagine we started multi-party democracy in '92. That's not a very long time. That's not a very long time. And if you ask me, we have to decide that at what point do we stop politics and develop the country? Because let's face it, if we do politics all day, we'll ask ourselves, where is the food? And that's why, as much as we reorganize ourselves in the political parties on how to acquire power and to retain power, we must also ask ourselves, but okay, once we've acquired power, are we building the country? Are we building infrastructure? Are we building the economy? Because we cannot be doing politics all through. But the question, the other thing that we want to ask ourselves, how comes that from '92 it's always the same players? The same names that we started hearing in '92, the same names that we are hearing them up to now. Probably it's because our politics is not about issues, it's not about political parties, it's about individual. An individual basically owns those political parties. And
that has been my point and my fear, because just wanted to be specific and focus on that. The individualization of the political parties. You look at the happenings in 2018, the sugar report debate in Parliament, you look at the VAT, and all ended mysteriously, the House punctuated by chaos, as members of Parliament did walk out on some of the important debating positions. But prior to that, there was a parliamentary group meeting that members of Parliament attended to. How do we end that and perhaps come up with a political plan or policy or mechanized one or institutionalize that in the current players of institutionalizing policies and framing this for the betterment of Kenyans and not for the individuals, because that seems to be, again, the point with which our politics is becoming, or rather is being directed or compassed by individuals, not the party policies and the laid-down procedures.
Every time a country is in a crisis, it's always the youth that saves the situation. And in '92, it's always the young people who came up and said, look, enough is enough, we want multi-party democracy. And even in 1963, at independence, it was young people, the Tom Mboya, the JM Karaoke, who came up and said, look, we have to stop this. And they fought for the independence. It's the young people who went to the bush in the Mau Mau to fight for the independence. Every society, when there is a crisis, young people always stand up and take up their position and fight for it. And because the young people are driven by ideals, not the old mentality. Where we are, we must also ask ourselves as the younger generation, what is there for us? Because let's face it, the typical young man now is more interested in the type of car they drive, the type of suit,
the posh life,
the posh life without working for it, the deals that they make, the wash that they do. So that kind of mentality will not challenge the status quo. The status quo to be challenged, you need young, few, very disciplined people. And I know you're a student of history. You know, ANC had always been very comfortable immediately after winning the election, until EFF came along and started shaking. Right now, ANC now have to sit and say, look, wait a minute. probably we need to change the way we do things. The other time, the CCM almost lost the election lost the election by Chadema, and the Chadema is actually a party which is driven by young people, and that made even ANC, even CCM to check who is the best candidate for the next generation. That's how Magufuli came in. And so even us in this country, we have to ask ourselves and start asking hard questions. That why is it that every time people go for an election, we are very good at electing the same people year in, year out. Yeah. So those are the questions that we have to ask ourselves. But that will require young people who are disciplined, who are focused, who are able to have what you call delayed gratification, not a guy who wants all of it at now. So that will take time. But I think there are fewer young people who are coming up. For example, if you look at Parliament, the young people, few young people. The
likes of Sakaja's.
Of course, Sakaja come in mind, where he's able, where he's able to look at issues as they are, not depending on the party where he comes from. So the younger people are coming up. It's only that they are too few. Probably we need to join and encourage them more. And like when you mention them in program like this, then the other people to hear about their name that, look, these are the youngsters who are rising and they need support.
Okay.
Then we'll have proper politics of issues where it's not about corruption.
Okay, and you have mentioned the fact that the political class needs to be diluted, that we need to come up with a crop of leaders who are oriented by the needs, or rather led by the needs of the people, but pointing out the most important element about the political conduct of the country in terms of the scorecard, and looking at perhaps the development ever since the 2010 Constitution promulgated on the 27th of August 2010. What is your scorecard then? Because there has been a report by the Parliamentary Watchdog Unit that members of Parliament who are young equally and who are in the youth bracket are not as active as they have been thought, or they packaged themselves in the 2017 elections. What needs to be changed?
First, our Parliament is too big. 390 people, you put them in one room. You don't expect all of them to speak. So that is a mistake that we did, and that constitution, that is a mistake that the constitution brought for us. So how I wish that we could reduce that number even to 150. So that we have few people in Parliament, and we have proper debates. Then we start questioning why is it that you are not active in Parliament. But as we speak now, 390 is too big. The other thing that you've mentioned, yes, there are other members of Parliament, young as they are, who never say anything in Parliament. So those one I don't know, but I think the electorate should actually be able to respond to that.
And of course, that having mentioned that, there's need for the electorate also to detach itself from the ethnic cocoonism or the tribal politics in the country that has been perhaps the dejection point of the political process in the country. But Anthony Odhiambo, I do appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on board.
Thank you so much.
That has been a lovely discussion.
Right.
I do appreciate your time. And thank you to you too for sending in your comments on our hashtag that was on Twitter, News Compass, and on 40920, which was our short SMS code. And of course, that's where we end the program tonight. But in about 45 minutes time, the Harambee Stars will be up against the Taifa Stars of Tanzania in the second most crucial game of their group in the 2019 AFCON edition. That will be happening in the 30 June Stadium in the Egyptian capital, Cairo, in the ongoing AFCON edition 2019, hosted by, of course, the Pharaohs. That is, of course, a match that we are all looking up to crucially, because it will be the deciding point of whether we are going to be heading to the knockout stages or we are boarding that flight from Cairo to the JKI. But all the best to the boys out there. If you're joining us from Cairo, that is in now, it's about 9:16. We are 10:16, 1 hour ahead, but we are keeping a track of the progress made by the Harambee Stars. But thank you so much for making time on the program from the onset, from the news and to the end of the discussion here on News Compass. We'll do it again next week by the grace of God. From the communications team here in our headquarters in Lavington, Nairobi, I am Ayub Abdikadir Abdim. Bye-bye.